All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. How is everybody doing? So, welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. Tonight, I am going to be teaching you guys so much information about trust. So, if you guys came here to find out more about how to set up a trust, you are in the right place. So, I have a lot planned for you guys for tonight. I am going to go through some slides so that I can show you the step-by-step process that you need to take in order to set up a trust. And then after that, we will dive into Q&A. So I'll show you what a trust looks like, and then we'll dive into any questions that you guys might have. So allow me to go through the presentation, and then I will answer your questions at the end. But I'm super excited that you guys are here. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Christina Yvette. I am the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth. So I have been a trustee since 2015. So I teach from a standpoint of how to actually operate a trust, right? So I teach from a standpoint of trusteeship. And so that is how I'm going to be educating you guys so that you know the ins and outs of what a trust fund is and how to actually operate it. That's the most important thing, because you guys already done your research. You guys heard the term trust fund. So now it's time for you guys to understand, how do I actually operate a trust to, its maximum capacity, okay? So that's what we are going to be going over today. So allow me to share my screen here. All right. And you guys are going to see, like, I love talking about this topic. There we go. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let me see here. All right, perfect. So I am a real estate investor. I have helped thousands of people set up trust funds. So the way that I got started was, once again, in 2015. I was actually a registered nurse, and I was pretty much living paycheck to paycheck. When I started my nursing career and I went to that hospital, they were so short staffed. They're like, "Can you start today?" I'm like, "I haven't even done orientation yet." And so I started my career in a hospital that was short staffed. So I was working 6 and 7 days, 12-hour shifts, and I got burnt out with my career within the first year. So I was trying to find a second stream of income because I was so tired of working overtime. And I had quickly realized that I was spending more time with my coworkers than I was with my 1-year-old baby. And so it was so frustrating. And that was one of my pain points. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this concrete box, taking care of my patients and just spending more time with my coworkers. So from there, I was driving to work one day, and this guy named Dan Merrill, so he's in the real estate investment industry. So he's like, "Hey, do you want to learn how to flip houses?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I signed up for his seminar. So he had a 3-day seminar where he taught about real estate, and I learned so much about real estate investing that I never knew before. And so as soon as I was done with that seminar, I went and I created my LLC and I started my real estate investment firm. And the next year, I bought my first property. Within 6 months, I bought my first property. And so that property, I got a hard money loan. It was a little 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and in Miami, and it needed to be rehabbed from top to bottom. And so I got a hard money loan, and my hard money lender became my mentor. And so he told me, he's like, "Christina, you need to put this property into a trust." And at that time, I was 25 years old. And I'm like, what the heck is a trust? I did not know. And so he educated me on that space, and he had, you know, he had $200 million worth of real estate. So I was like, okay, if you have all your properties into a trust, then I also need to do the same thing. So I set up a trust. I put that house into a trust because it was my first property, and I did not want anybody to take that property from me, because since it was being renovated, anything could happen, right? So somebody could step on a nail, the roof could cave in. I didn't know. And so I wanted to protect myself in that standpoint. So I did it from my first piece of real estate, thank God. And so I've been operating as a trustee ever since. Okay. And so tonight I want to educate you guys so that you too can protect your assets, because we never know, right? We live in the United States, which is a very Sioux-friendly country, and you do not want to be one of those victims to either the government or your neighbor or somebody who wants to sue you, okay? And so we'll go over that in just a moment. So let's just dive right in. And like I said, if you have any questions, write them down and I'll be able to answer your questions, okay? So let's see here. All right, so let's talk about what a trust is, right? Because we've heard the term trust, but we're not familiar, right, what it actually is. So a trust is an entity. So just like you are an entity. A lot of us, we don't see ourselves as entities, but we are. So how is it that we operate in society? We operate with our name, we operate with our social, okay? And so a trust is the same thing. So a trust is an entity that's operating here in society with its name and with its EIN, okay? So now the question becomes, how does this entity come into existence? So the way that a trust is established is because it is a contractual entity. So it is established by way of a contract, okay? And so that contract is called a trust indenture, and that means agreement, okay? And so you have to actually create this contract. You have to put a bunch of provisions and bylaws inside of the contract of how you want this trust to operate, okay? There's two sections that I need you to be mindful of when you are establishing this contract. The first section is the declaration. So the declaration is where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So you're declaring that it is a trust entity that you're setting up inside of this contract, and that it is not a corporation, it is not an LLC, it is not a joint venture, a partnership, or any of those other types of contracts, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is the indenture, which I told you is where you have the provisions and the bylaws. So those are the rules and regulations of how you want this trust to operate, okay? And who is going to operate them. So there's several different parties involved in the contract, okay? So when you go to set up this trust, you're going to have an establishment date and an expiration date. So the establishment date is when the agreement actually came together, and the expiration date depends on the term. So you can operate a trust anywhere between 1 to 100 years, right? And so if you set up 100 years, then you know it's going to expire, 100 years from today, okay? So now let's talk about the different parties that are involved in the contract, okay? The first party that I need you to be aware of is the grantor. Some other names that you might hear when you're doing your research is settlor or trustor, okay? All that means is that's the creator of the trust, okay? So one, they create the trust with the trustee, and two, they are going to donate or fund the trust, okay? So they're going to hand over cash money or a property or any type of currency or any type of asset, anything that has intrinsic value. They're going to hand it over to the trustee. The trustee is going to accept it on behalf of the trust, okay? So let's talk about the trustee. The trustee is the controller of the trust. So that is the individual that's going to carry out the terms and conditions that are set forth in that contract. So that individual has all the power and all the control. Another name for trustee is fiduciary, okay? So you might hear that term when you're doing your research, and I highly encourage that you do your own research, okay, when it comes to trust. Now, so the trustee is the fiduciary. So what they are going to do is they're going to be controlling the trust, managing all the assets that are inside of the trust. They are what we call the authorized signatory. So they're signing on behalf of the trust, and they're doing all of this for another party, which is the beneficiaries, okay? So the beneficiaries are the inheritors of the trust, meaning that they're going to eventually inherit the assets that are inside of the trust once the trust is terminated. So remember in the previous slide, we said there's an establishment date, which is quote unquote the birthday of the trust. And then you have an expiration date, okay? So the entire goal that you need to have is for the trust not to expire, especially if you're in this space where you want to be building generational wealth. If you want the wealth that you're creating today to last 10, 15, 20 generations into the future, then you need to make sure that that trust is renewed every 100 years, okay? So if the trust is terminated, then those assets go straight to the beneficiary. If the trust is not terminated, then they remain inside of the trust under the control of the trustee, okay? And those beneficiaries receive distributions, okay? So they receive, either a monthly allowance, right? So a distribution is similar to an allowance, okay? So it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be annually, however you want to set it up as the trustee, because you're the one who controls the money that's inside of the trust and the assets that are inside of the trust, okay? So let's talk about the different types of trust so that you can get a better understanding. There are hundreds of different types of trust, okay? And once again, once you do your research and your due diligence, you'll be able to figure this out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down some major categories of what trusts fall under, okay? So let's just dive right into that. So the first category that I want to explain to you is express versus implied. So what do we mean by this? An express trust is a trust that is written, okay? So that means that it is in a contract style. It's black and white. You physically have the documents. You physically sign, with your wet ink signature, okay? So that's what an express trust is. Versus an implied trust is a verbal trust, okay? So that means that you and the grantor talked, and the grantor told you, oh, this is, how I want you to run the trust, and you just got everything stored in your head, okay? So out of those two types of trust, express and implied, you definitely want an express trust, okay? You want it in writing so that you can have proof that this trust actually exists, okay? Now, the next category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature, which means that it has less provisions. It has less rules, less regulations, less conditions, less bylaws, okay? Because it is simple, what needs to happen is the trustee has to distribute all of the money, 100% of the money that's inside of the trust needs to be distributed, and it goes straight to the beneficiary, okay? Versus a complex trust. With a complex trust is longer in nature, so there's more provisions, there's more bylaws, okay? There's more rules and regulations. So because it's complex, what happens is the trustee can actually keep trust funds inside of that trust fund account, and the trustee does not have to distribute all of the money that's inside of the trust. So some of that money can be held inside of the trust for operating expenses, for maintenance, for anything, just to build up the net worth of the trust, okay? All right, cool. So the next category that I want to give you is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is a trust where the actual trustee has full discretion to be able to make changes or to make decisions for the trust, okay, that are not inside of the contract. So one example I like to give is, crypto is something that we've all been doing for like the last 10 years, right? And so if you as the trustee decide that it is a good idea for the trust to go and acquire some cryptocurrency, but it's not inside of the trust contract, because nowhere inside of the trust contract does it say cryptocurrency, you're still able to do that, okay? So that's what discretionary means versus non-discretionary. So non-discretionary is the total opposite. So what are we saying is that you do not have the discretion to be able to make decisions that's not inside of the contract. So once again, if you have a non-discretionary trust, that means that you as the trustee cannot go and buy crypto, because in the trust contract, it doesn't say anything about crypto, okay? So just be mindful of that when you are moving forward towards setting up your trust, okay? Now, let's talk about another category, which is statutory versus non-statutory, okay? So a statutory trust is a trust where every state has its own laws, okay? These laws are called statutes and codes, okay? So what we're saying here is that um, the state statutes and codes for a statutory trust are embedded inside of the contract. Okay. So if you're setting it up in Georgia, all of the Georgia state statutes and codes dealing with trust are inside of that contract. Okay. So because it's inside of that contract, what happens is your trust then is regulated by the state. Your trust then becomes public because it has to be registered with the state, and you're restricted to where you can only use that trust in Georgia, in that one state, okay? Which can be challenging if you are operating all over, okay? So that's with a statutory trust, okay? Now you have the contrary, which is non-statutory. So with the non-statutory trust, what we're saying is that there are no state statutes, no codes inside of the contract, which means that your trust is private. It doesn't have to be regulated by the state, and it doesn't have to be registered by the state, and you are not limited to only operate that trust in that one state, which means that because it's a domestic trust, you can actually operate it in all 50 states and all U.S. territories like Guam, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, things like that, okay? So that's a beautiful process, okay? And now let me give you the last category. So every single trust falls within one of these two categories, okay? So the first one is revocable and versus irrevocable, okay? So let's talk about it. So a revocable trust. Now, when we're talking about revocable and irrevocable, we're only referring to one party. The one party that we are referring to is the grantor. So remember in the previous slide, I said that the grantor is the creator, okay? So they're the creator on paper. They're going to sign the trust as the creator, okay? So with that being said, what we're saying is that they have revocability or irrevocability, okay? So let's break that down so that you can better understand what I'm trying to say. Now, with a revocable trust, the grantor is the grantor and the trustee. So they're the same person, okay? They're serving as both grantor and trustee, so creator and controller. That's the first thing, okay? The second thing is that the grantor has the power to make changes, like they can amend the trust, they can remove assets from the trust, they can remove trustees, beneficiaries. So they have that flexibility, okay? So because they have so much power and control as the grantor, that trust is seen as their alter ego, okay? So that trust typically does not have its own EIN. So it operates off of the Social Security number of the grantor, okay? And so because the grantor has so much power and control, then it's seen as their alter ego, which means that whoever comes after the grantor or the trustee is able to go after that trust, okay? And if they are able to go after that trust, if that trust was to end up in litigation, then what will happen is the judge will decide to pierce through a revocable trust, okay? And if the judge decides to pierce through a revocable trust, then unfortunately that trust becomes a part of the public records. So there goes your privacy right there. And that means that that the trust, they force you to produce it in court. So now what happens is everyone can see the contents of the trust. So they're able to see the entire trust contract. They're able to see who the beneficiaries are, what assets you have, the net worth of the trust, everything, okay? Which is very challenging, okay? So it's very detrimental to your estate for that to happen. So unfortunately, your assets are not protected with a revocable trust. They are not. Do your research, do your due diligence, use Google, use whatever you need to use in order to confirm what I'm telling you, okay? So they're not fully protected. The only thing that a revocable trust does is help you avoid probate, okay? So later on, I'm going to explain to you what probate looks like so that you can better understand that process and why it's so important for you to avoid it, okay? So now let's talk about the other type of trust, which is an irrevocable trust, okay? Now, with an irrevocable trust, the grantor and the trustee cannot be the same person. Okay, so that's a good thing. So because they cannot be the same person, the grantor has what we call irrevocability. So that means that they cannot make changes to the trust. They cannot terminate the trust. If they were to put assets in the trust, they can't take those assets out. They can't remove the trustees. They can't remove the beneficiaries, okay? They can't benefit from the trust, okay? So with that being said, with the irrevocable trust, you definitely want to be the trustee. Now, with the irrevocable trust, your assets are fully protected because it's irrevocable, because the creator has no power, no control during the remainder of their lifetime, okay? So if that trust was to end up in litigation, because that trust is seen as a separate entity and not an alter ego, it operates with its own EIN and not off of the grantor Social Security. If it was to end up in litigation, the judge would decide not to pierce through an irrevocable trust. Okay, which means that you get to maintain your privacy. No one, and then you are not forced to produce the trust in court. Okay, so it's impenetrable. Okay, which is exactly what you want if you want to fully protect your assets. So your assets will be fully protected with an irrevocable trust. Okay, which is ideally what the goal is, okay? Especially if we are trying to build generational wealth, right? You actually want that wealth to last the next generation versus somebody being able to sue you and take everything away, all your assets, okay? So with that being said, with the irrevocable trust, once again, you won't have to produce it in court, which means that you're going to remain private. So no one's going to know the contents of the trust. No one's going to know who the beneficiaries are, what assets you have inside of the trust, or anything, okay? Because it's not registered with the public records. So that's a beautiful process, okay? So let's continue on. Now, how to actually create a trust, okay? How to create a trust. Step one is you need to determine what type of trust you want to create. Remember, I told you there's hundreds of different types of trust. So what is the best type of trust for you, for your business, for your family, okay? Now, based off of the categories that I just mentioned to you guys, the type of trust that I recommend, the type of trust that we call a bulletproof trust, is a trust that falls under these categories. So one, it is express. It's an express trust. Two is discretionary in nature. Three, it is complex. Four, it is non-statutory. And five, it is irrevocable. Okay, so it needs to fall under those five categories in order for it to be truly bulletproof, in order for your assets to be fully protected, okay, in order for you to operate privately, okay, to where people are not going to know who owns that house, who owns that car, who owns all of this, okay? So once again, do your research. Now, that's the type of trust that I recommend, okay? Number two, now that you've determined the type of trust that you actually want to create, what you're going to do is you're going to name the trust, okay? So I'm pretty sure I got a bunch of entrepreneurs here. And so when you set up your business, you named your business, right? So it's the same thing, okay? Because this is an entity that is operated very similar to a business, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to name the trust, okay? You can name it whatever you want. So let's just say you want to name it, Rose Estate, okay? So that's two very unique names, okay? So there's two things that I need you to know, and I need you to avoid this because I've seen this a mistake so many times, and I don't want you to make the same mistake that other people in society make, okay? First thing, do not name the trust after yourself. So if you do your research, you will see that if somebody is called, if their name is John Smith, then they're going to set up a trust and they're going to name that trust the John Smith Trust. That is the biggest error that you can make. Okay, why? Because we are setting up a trust for privacy purposes, right? Just in case we're getting sued, we don't want anybody to know that we're tied to that trust. Okay, so you do not want to name the trust after yourself. Okay, so that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and I need you to avoid that mistake. Okay, so one, do not name the trust after yourself. You can use unique names or unique words. So one thing that I see a lot of people do is they'll use abbreviations, right? So JM, estate, right? So that is okay. Some people would like to use their last names. Last names are super common. As long as you don't use the combination of first and last, then you're okay. All right. Another thing is they like to use terms like legacy and dynasty, right? Those are beautiful terms that you might want to use, especially if this is generational, which for a lot of us, this is generational, okay? So think about those unique words that you can put together that's not tied back to you, that can't be traced back to you, that you can actually name your trust, okay? The second mistake that I see a lot of people make that I don't want you to make is where they'll have the name of the trust end with the word term, with the term trust, okay? So do not make that mistake either. To where the word trust is at the end, just like an LLC, just like an Inc. It doesn't have to work like that. So you can just have Rose Estate. It doesn't have to be Rose Estate Trust. You don't want people to know that you're operating a trust. You don't want people to know that your house is owned by a trust. So why even have the word trust in the actual name when you don't have to? It's not required. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is very vitally important. I need you to take the right steps when you are setting up your trust. Okay, now the next thing that you need to do is you need to appoint the parties. Remember, in the previous slide, I told you that this contract has two main people in the contract, okay? Which is who? The grantor and the trustee, okay? So you need to appoint those individuals in the contract, okay? So what you want to do is if you decide, hey, Christina, I want the bulletproof trust, right? So that means that it's irrevocable. You can't be the grantor and the trustee. So then what are you going to do? You're going to choose to be the trustee, okay? You're going to choose to maintain power and control over the assets that you're placing inside of the trust, okay? And so you're going to appoint someone else to be the grantor, okay? And so now but now it's going to be both the you and the grantor that are going to be setting up this contract, okay? Once you've appointed those two parties, then you'll appoint the beneficiaries. Now the beneficiaries and all of these parties, right, can be entities and natural persons. So the beneficiary can be another trust. The beneficiary can be your kids. Usually what we do is, because once again, this is generational, right? So what we do is we put our children as the beneficiaries, okay? So they are going to be able to benefit from the trust, meaning they're going to be receiving those distributions, okay? Now, the next party that you need to put, or the next appointment that you need to make is of the successor trustee. So who is that? The successor trustee is the individual that's going to take over after you in the event that something happens. Like what? Well, in the event that you expire, in the event that you become incapacitated, in the event that you get old and decide, I don't want to run this trust anymore, and you decide to resign, then the successor trustee is going to take over. So they're going to pick up where you left off, and they're going to continue to operate the trust. So that is the person who's going to be taking over after you. It's very, very, very important that you name that person. Why? Because tomorrow is not promised. Okay. So you need to have your successor ready to go. Okay. And they have to be at least 18 years or older. Okay. Because a lot of people, they try to name their 10-year-old child. No, if something happens tomorrow, a 10-year-old cannot run a trust. Okay, so the person that you appoint as your successor needs to already be readily available to take over tomorrow. Okay, All right, cool. So let's move on to step 3. So what is step 3? Well, we're going to actually create the trust agreement. Remember, I told you it is a contract. So we're setting up the contract. There's no way for you to create a trust without the actual trust indenture, okay? You need that contract. Later on, I will show you what that contract looks like, okay? So one thing that I want you to be aware of is that if you are intentional about building generational wealth, right? What you're going to put inside of that contract, right? One of the most important provisions inside of that contract are spendthrift provisions. So what the heck is a spendthrift provision, right? A spendthrift provision is rules, regulations, and restrictions of and of how the beneficiaries are going to be able to spend the distribution. Okay. The last thing you want is for those beneficiaries to blow the dough. You don't want them to blow the money that's inside of the trust. So you got to put rules and regulations in place, which are spendthrift provisions. So one of them is, let's just say you put an age restriction, meaning that, hey, you beneficiary, you can't get your full distribution until you're 30 years old, right? So that's one of them. And so a lot of us individuals that we set up the trust will do that because we feel like that's an age where they're mature, where they're going to make good, sound decisions, where they're going to be able to balance and maintain their finances, right? Versus, and so let's just say that their distribution is like $10,000 a month, right? Does a 2-year-old need $10,000 a month? No. So that's why you need to have an age restriction in there. It's so vitally important, okay? The next one is like an education restriction, right? So if you are so big on college, right, and let's just say, oh, you have to have a college education in order for you to receive a distribution. That beneficiary is going to go get a degree. Why? Because they want to benefit from the trust, right? If you tell them, hey, you have to know some type of, financial literacy, or you have to, let's see, you have to be an entrepreneur or business owner, right? Or you have to spend the money on investments like real estate or crypto or stocks and bonds. You can do that. So what you are in a sense doing is you're controlling the money from the grave. That's exactly what you want to do. At the end of the day, who created the wealth? You did. So you should be able to control the wealth from many generations down the line. So if you tell them, hey, 25% has to go into real estate, then that's what it is. If not, they're not going to be able to receive a distribution. So when I tell you spendthrift provisions are vitally important, they really are. Okay. Somebody's writing on my screen. Who's doing it? Can you please stop? All right. So with that being said, let's continue on to number 4. Okay. Let me find out who this is. Hold on. I don't know. All right, let's continue on. I'm not sure what happened. Let's see here. 1 second, guys. All righty, let's continue. All right, no problem. Rudolph said it was him and it was an accident. Okay, we accept accidents. So back to what I was saying. All right, so now we already know that we have to control the money from the grave, okay? So we're putting spendthrift provision. There's a lot of other provisions that you want to put in there, okay? But that's just one example that I can give you in this short period of time. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, you have to notarize the trust, okay? So what does that mean? Well, the trust needs to be legalized, and so it needs to be notarized by 2 people, the grantor and the trustee. So that means that your signatures are required. Okay, you want to use wet ink, and it's going to be notarized by a notary public. Okay, that is going to be the person who is witnessing your signature to say that you are the person that is actually signing. Okay, so once they sign and put their seal, now what happens is that trust is legal and you can start operating that trust, okay? So immediately when that trust is legal, what you're going to do is you're going to move on to number 5. Number 5 is open up a bank account, okay? So there's 2 things that you need when you go to open up a bank account. The first one is a certificate of trust. The second one is your EIN number, okay? So let's talk about it. So what is a certificate of trust? Well, a certificate of trust is proof of identity that the trust exists. So just like how you walk up into a bank and they ask you for your driver's license, right? What's on your driver's license? Your name, your ID number, your address, your height, your weight, your date of birth, all this stuff, right? This is vital information or a quick snapshot of who you are, okay? Well, the same thing is applicable for a certificate of trust. It has the name of the trust, the date of birth of the trust, the address of the trust, the ID number with the IRS, right? Who the grantors and trustees are, certain provisions, right? So it has all of that vital information. So that is the ID for the trust so that the banker knows that this is a legal trust, okay? The last thing that you want to do is walk around with all 70, 80 pages of your trust. You don't want to do that, okay? You're going to walk around with the certificate of trust. The second thing is the EIN number. EIN stands for Employer Identification Number. You're probably familiar if you are a business owner, okay? Your LLCs and corps have EINs. Now, you're going to have that 9-digit number that's associated with the trust. And those are the 2 things that you're going to provide to the bank, okay? So now that you know what you're going to provide to the bank, what you're going to do is you are going to choose a bank that you're going to establish a relationship with, okay? So it could be any type of financial institution, meaning it could be a bank, a credit union, it could be a brokerage, right? So those are mainly the financial institutions that you can go to, okay? So now what you're going to do is you're going to get a trust fund account. So a trust fund account could be a checking account, it could be a savings account, it could be a money market account, it could be a brokerage account, and it could be what we call a cash management account, okay? All of those qualify to serve as trust funds. And so that is where you're going to house the money that belongs to the trust, okay? So now that you have set up the bank account, right? Now it's time to fund it. And so you're going to fund it with whatever minimum you want. So some banks, their minimum is 0. Some banks, their minimum is $100. Some are 500, some are 1,000. It depends on who you decide to establish a banking relationship with, okay? What their minimum is of how much you need to put in that trust fund. And once you meet the minimum, you can put whatever you want, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever it is, okay? All right, so now we've established the trust fund, okay? That's what a trust fund is. And we funded it with $1,000. What is the next step? Well, the next step is the most important step. The most important step in this whole entire process is you actually transferring your assets into the trust. This is the most important thing that you have to do. And this is where I see people make the biggest mistake. This is where I see people forget. This is where I see people get stuck. This is where I see people get confused and they don't know how to move forward, right? So the last thing that you want is to set up a trust and never put your house into the trust. Never put your car into the trust. Never put your jewelry into the trust. Your insurance policies, whatever it is that you want to protect, That $500,000 that you have in the bank account, right? So, for example, let's just say that you're going to put your house, right? You got this big fancy house, white picket fence. It's beautiful, right? Your kids live there, everything, right? This house is in your personal name. You need to get it out of your personal name because you're all over the public records. A lot of us, we don't know this, right? We don't know what we don't know. So it is very easy for someone to find out where you live. All they have to do is go down to the county's website, do a property search, put in the address, and they find out who the owner of that house is. Or all they need to do is put your name, John Smith. And every single house that John Smith owns in Virginia County is going to show up. Why? Because you're on the public records. That's the way that it was designed. Okay? That's the way that the government set it up for us. So you need to protect yourself from that because now, because you're a part of the public record, you're what we call low-hanging fruit. That means you don't have your ish together. If you have your name splattered all over the public records, you're vulnerable. It's easy for us to come after you. So don't make it easy. So what you want to do is you want to transfer that property into the trust. So how do we do that, right? What steps do we need to take? Well, what you need to do is first and foremost, you need to list that property inside of the trust indenture. Okay, so there's going to be a schedule inside of the trust indenture where you're going to list all of the assets. That's very simple, right? So you list the house, the car, the jewelry, the cash. Okay, so now the next thing you need to do is you need to do the legal transfer, right? You got a county, you got the courthouse, you got the state. Okay, so for example, with real estate, what you want to do is when you bought that house, they gave you a deed. They gave you a warranty deed to your house. Okay. What you need to do is you need to re-deed that property into the trust. It's a very simple process. What we use is a quitclaim deed. Okay. So now what you're going to do is you're going to deed it from your name into the trust name. It needs to be notarized by you to say, yes, I'm the legal owner of this house and I'm transferring the deed, right? And then what happens is it needs to be notarized and then you need to turn it into the clerk of courts. So you got to go down to the county, you go straight into the clerk of courts. There's an office called the county recorder's office. You submit your new deed. They're going to record your new deed. And now they're going to they're going to update the public records to show that the new owner of that house is your trust. Right? It's just that simple. Okay? But a lot of people, they get confused. They don't take the necessary steps legally. Sometimes they think, oh, it's good enough because I just put it in the trust contract. No, it's not good enough, right? You have to go down to the county. You have to go down to the state, right? So for example, your car has what? A title. So what do you need to do? Retitle that car. How do you do it? A bill of sale submitted to the DMV. You got to go down to the DMV. Why? Because that car is registered with the state. So there's other legal components and steps that you need to take in order for that asset to be properly transferred into the trust, okay? So do not make the same mistake that I've seen so many people make. One lady, she called me and she's like, oh, Christina, my dad just transitioned and he had a trust. And I said, okay, so, so you get to avoid probate. And she's like, I guess so. We just don't know what to do. And I said, what do you mean you don't know what to do? Like, are you the trustee? She's like, yes. And I said, okay, so you just take over, right? If you're the successor, you just take over. She's like, okay. She's like, but the deed is still in his name. I said, what? I said, so your dad set up a trust, but he never transferred the deed. She's like, yes. I said, I'm so sorry. but you're going to have to go to probate, right? So let's talk about what probate is and a bunch of other stuff, okay? Let's talk about asset protection because this is what I love to talk about, okay? Asset protection. So now what is the number one reason why you want to set up a trust? Well, it is asset protection. It's also privacy. What can a trust protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcy. It can protect you from divorce. It can protect you from foreclosures. It can protect you from heavy taxations. It can protect you from lawsuits. It can protect you from probate. Okay. So I'm only going to talk about two of them. Okay. So the two that I want to talk about is lawsuits and probate because those are the two most common. All right. So let's quickly talk about lawsuits because, like I said, unfortunately, we live in America and America is a sue-friendly country. Unfortunately, everybody wants to sue you. So do not wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit. You have no idea how many people I've spoken to before they were in a lawsuit and they call me 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later and say, oh, Christina, I'm being sued. I'm like, oh, well, you should have set up that trust 6 months ago. You should have set up that trust a year and a half ago. Now you come when you're being sued. You're walking around here literally thinking that you're not going to be sued. You have no clue. Your sibling wants to sue you. Your employer, your coworkers, your neighbor definitely wants to sue you. Everybody wants to sue you. Your tenants. Don't even let me get started with real estate, right? So with that being said, let's just say that you're a business owner. Let me talk about this really quickly. Hold on. Let me get off of this because I want to know who in here has a business. Who is an entrepreneur business owner? Let me know. So you can put it, okay, Bree. All right, Bree. Zoom user, Michelle. All right, Michelle own a business. What kind of business do you own? Leslie. All right, Richard. Richard, you got your hand up. Let me see. All right. The wheelchairpreneur. I know he own a business. Mobile phlebotomy. I love that. Okay, Jeanette. Jerome. Okay, awesome. So I got a lot of entrepreneurs in here. That's fantastic. So let's talk about it. So my first question to you is, what type construction company? Okay, Ralph. Multiple businesses, including commercial properties over the world. I love that. Yes, I'm international too. So I love that. Congratulations. And that brings up another point, right? Everybody think that the US is the end all be all. No, it's not. Okay. So you want to definitely diversify, right? Diversify your portfolio, diversify your income, diversify whatever it is you need to diversify, right? And also invest in other countries. Okay. So with that being said, let's break it down. Consulting, exactly. So let me ask you a question. Now that we know that we got a bunch of entrepreneurs in there, one of the most common types of companies is what we call an LLC, right? And so let me ask you this question. What does LLC stand for? And I need you to come off mute. I don't want to be up here by myself. I'm feeling kind of lonely up here. So what?
Limited Liability Corporation.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's not a corporation, it's a
Limited liability company.
Thank
company.
you. Thank you.
So,
Company.
All right, Michelle. Okay, exactly. So all of you guys are right. So y'all know exactly what it is. Y'all must have LLCs. So now that I know that y'all have LLCs and that y'all know what it stands for, which is limited liability company, you actually hear it in the name, right? So what do you hear inside of that name? Inside of those three words, what do you hear?
limited.
Okay.
Limited liability.
Limited liability. Okay, so now my next question to you is, if you know that the company has limited liability, who do you think has the other half of that limited liability?
The owner. Me.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I got nothing but geniuses in here. I'm so excited. Y'all getting it. I'm telling you, Listen, let's put some fire in the chat, please, because they are cooperating, they are very engaged, and they're getting these answers. So I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now that we know that the owner has liability in this LLC, right? What do you think might happen? So let's just say that you own a candle business, right? So you have this candle business, you out here, they order online and you ship it to their house, right? You never know what's going to happen in their house, right? And so let's just say a customer lights one of your candles, her whole house lights on fire, right? So now she's like, who sold me this candle? Well, it was this company. So let me go see who owns this company, right? And so it is so easy for them to find out who the owner is. Like, does anybody know how they can track you and find out who the owner of the LLC is?
Your name is on the LLC. You're like
Uh-huh.
twin.
And where can they verify that your LLC exists? Where?
Online
Secretary
through
of
the government
State.
website.
Secretary of State.
Exactly. Oh my God, I love it.
Unless you got a holding company in Wyoming.
Exactly. Okay, so that's all they have to do is they got to go to the Secretary of State. They have to do a search for the company. They put in your company name that sold them this candle, and all of the company information is there, visible on the public records. You're on the public records, okay? So what do they see? The company name. They can see the EIN. They can see who the registered agent is. They can see the principal office address of the company, and then they see who the authorized member is, right? Which is you. So they're able to see your articles of organization. They can just pull it right up. You know that, right? They can see your annual report, everything. They can see everything. So now they know who they got to sue. Why? Because you made it easy for them. Why? Because you what we call the low-hanging fruit. So what do we do with the low-hanging fruit? We snatch it right off the tree. So what they're gonna do to you, they're gonna snatch everything that you have. Why? Because you allowed them to. Why? Because you didn't have your affairs in order. So this is what happens, right? So now that they went to the Secretary of State, they know who they need to sue. They start to sue your company, right? They sue the LLC. It's now going to court. It's in litigation. And unfortunately, the judge says, yeah, it was your candle that burned her house down. Her house was $500,000. You got a judgment now for $500,000. But last time I checked, the LLC don't have $500,000 in assets or liquid cash. So what happens is because the LLC cannot fulfill the judgment, the judge decides to pierce through the corporate veil. Do you know what the corporate veil is? Does anybody know what the corporate veil is?
Your personal assets.
So the corporate veil is that little tiny umbrella that you thought was covering you on a rainy day. But unfortunately, it's raining cats and dogs right now because they want $500,000. So you thought that you had this little bit of asset protection with your LLC. But the judge said, I don't think so. The judge pierced through the corporate veil and goes after the authorized member, which is you. Okay? And so now they're coming after you because you own the LLC. And so they're going to come after you for what? They're going to garnish your wages because some of us got a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9. They're going to garnish your entire bank account, everything that's in your personal name, plus whatever's in the business name. You heard it, you seen it. How many times we see on the news, oh, this person's account got frozen. This person's account, they just dipped into it, right? And then they're going to seize your assets. So that car, that nice fancy car that's in the driveway, gone. The house, they seized it. Why? Because you have a judgment for $500,000. So they're seizing your assets to liquidate it to fulfill the judgment. Why? Because you decided to be the owner of your LLC. Now, back to what I said, right? We don't know what we don't know. So a lot of us, we went and set up our LLCs and we decided to be the authorized member because that's what that's what they told us to do, or that's because that's all that we knew, right? But what you need to do is, in all actuality, you do not want to be the owner of your LLC. What you want to do is you want to set up a trust. You want to set up a trust that is uniquely designed to own and control other entities. And now this trust is going to own your LLC. So how do you take yourself off the LLC? Easy, right? What you're going to do is you're going to go down to the Secretary of State where you set up that LLC. You tell them, oops, I made a mistake. You ask them for an amendment. You remove yourself as the authorized member. You add the trust now as the authorized member, and you turn it in. And now they're going to update the public records to show that that LLC is no longer owned by you, but it's owned by a trust. Why? Why do you want to do this? Why? Well, you want to do this because the trust is designed to take 100% liability for that LLC. You don't want no liability. So if anybody tries to come after your LLC, they're going to have to go through the trust. And now that trust, we operate it as a holding company. I know you heard that word. If you've been in the business game and been operating as an entrepreneur, I know that you heard the word holding company. Okay? So that's what you need to do. That is how the trust is going to serve. I'm going to talk about it in just a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Now, that is what you need to do. So please remove yourself from the Secretary of State. Do not be the authorized member of your LLC. I'll talk about it just in a minute, a little bit more about the strategy, okay? Remove yourself as that owner. You do not want to be the owner of your LLC, especially if you're running a high liability business. Somebody said phlebotomy, right? I'm a registered nurse. Do you know that I had a patient that she had got an IV and they gave her an infusion and she ended up getting damn, what's the name of that thing? I can't remember, but her whole is fasciitis. So the liquid, instead of going into her vein, it went into the tissues, and she pretty much almost lost her whole arm, right? Her muscles was exposed and everything. It was crazy. She sued them, right? You have high liability. Come on, somebody said construction, real estate, trucking, high liability businesses. Okay? You need to have somebody or something right in the middle. You need to have that business trust in the middle of you and that LLC. You cannot own that LLC direct. All right. So what's the next thing, right? Well, the next thing that I wanted to tell you guys about is probate. So let me ask you guys a question, right? Let's get back to this. So let me ask you a question. If you didn't wake up tomorrow and you got this big fancy house, like I said, how do you expect that house to be transferred to your kids or your spouse or your family or whoever it needs to be transferred to? Come off mute and let me know. How do you expect that house to be transferred?
By way of a trust.
No, you don't have a trust. How do you?
Probate in court. Court's gonna decide where it goes.
Oh my God, Bree Marie. Oh, I love it. Okay, yes, thank you, Bree. So Bree is absolutely correct. This is what happens, and I'll tell you, listen, I'm just keeping it real with y'all, okay? So if you got this house and this house is in your personal name and you don't wake up tomorrow, you're gonna leave it up to a judge for the judge to decide if your son or your daughter or your spouse or whoever gets your house. That judge does not know you. That judge does not know your son or your daughter. But because you didn't have your affairs in order, that's what you did. You left it up to the judge, right? And so this is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the probate process. So I'm going to explain to you guys now what that looks like, okay? So this is the probate process. And a lot of us, I'm just going to say it again, okay? I'm just going to keep saying it because when I tell you I don't mind being a broken record, I don't. We don't know what we don't know. A lot of us have bought into the lie that our kids automatically get our property. That is the biggest, fattest lie. Your kids do not automatically, oh, I only have one son. It doesn't matter. He's still going to have to fight in court, right? So let me explain to you what the probate process looks like, right? Let's just say that you have that house with the white picket fence, okay? You got the car, you got $500,000 in the bank, okay? That's the setup, right? And so you didn't wake up tomorrow, right? A lot of us, we don't know that that when we transition, right? The state where we're a resident, they created a state for us. So you didn't know that, right? So what ends up happening is, and a lot of it, you know what? Let me talk about this real quick. A lot of us, we think that a will is good enough. A will is a wish list. A will cannot own anything. A will is a contract, right? Which is your last will and testament, where you're saying, I wish my daughter will get my house. I wish my son will get the cash money in my bank account. That is what you're wishing, right? In the will. The will has to automatically goes into probate, right? And it's going to be carried out in probate, okay? So a lot of us, we think, oh, I got a will. No, okay? So that's the first thing. So now you got the house, the car, the money, and a will, right? You didn't wake up tomorrow. The first thing that happens is the state where you're a resident, they're going to go ahead and create an estate for you. So let's just say you live in Texas. Texas is going to go ahead and create your estate, the John Smith estate, okay? Then they're going to transfer all of your assets in there. So they're going to transfer that house. They're going to transfer the car. They're going to transfer the cash money that you have sitting inside of Wells Fargo. Okay? And so now what happens with your estate? It goes straight to probate. Okay? So a lot of us, we didn't even know that we're going to end up with an estate anyways. You end up with an estate anyways. You might as well create it now while you're living versus letting the state of Texas create it for you. Okay? So now that your estate is in probate, what happens? Well, the first thing that happens is the judge is going to pay off your liabilities. So what are your liabilities? That's all of your debt, okay? So a lot of us, we don't even know that we have a lot of debt, right? So we got credit card debt, we got student loan debt, we got whatever kind of loan, but another debt that we don't even think about is towards the end of life, you rack up a lot of medical bills. So what you got? You were sitting up in the ICU, that's 6 figures, nursing home, rehab, whatever it is, right? So now you got hospital bills that need to be covered, right? And so the judge is going to pay off the credit cards, the student loans, and the hospital bills. If the cash money that you had inside of the bank account is not enough to cover those things, they're going to start, the judge is going to begin to liquidate your assets. Okay? That means that that house that you thought your son and your daughter was going to get, The judge said, sell that house so we can pay Medicare, so we could pay Medicaid, so we could pay the state, right? So we could pay the credit card companies. So you didn't even know that. We don't know, right? And so that's exactly what happened, right? And so now you have your children, right? Your children that are supposed to be grieving in peace, fighting in court to keep mom's house, to keep dad's house. And they're not even able to because the judge decided to sell it so that Medicaid could get paid. Okay? So now that the judge has paid off your liabilities, right? All of that debt, then you have a probate attorney that needs to get paid, right? Because they represented your estate. And then you have the probate court fees. So it's 3 different organizations or entities or groups that got paid. Your liabilities, the attorney and the court got paid first. Whatever is left over is what your children get. Your children literally get the leftovers. Sometimes it's nothing. It's crumbs. Why? Because you didn't have your affairs in order. So your children are losing their inheritance. How many times have you seen it to where homes are being auctioned at the county steps? You have seen it. Go to the auction website right now. Who do you think, where do you think those homes came from? Because people did not have their affairs in order. And so the county just snatched, I'm telling you, so anyways, let's continue on. So now we understand what that whole probate process looks like, right? So a lot of us, we don't know that probate is so probate is inevitable, but we can avoid probate. There's only one way to avoid probate. The one way to avoid probate is by you setting up a trust estate now while you're living. So when I tell you that you need to set up your trust estate now, it is so vitally important because your children are losing their inheritance. And you know I'm telling the truth. Because we bought into this lie thinking that our kids automatically get what we have. No, they don't. Okay? So what you need to do is you need to set up a trust estate. You need to put that house, that car, and that bank account. You need to set up a trust for the bank account and transfer that $500,000 into that trust. Because this is the process that is going to happen now. If you didn't wake up tomorrow, then what happens is your successor trustee takes over. They pick up where you left off. They continue to operate the trust, right? Your children get to grieve in peace, and you and your family get to avoid the entire probate process. Why? Because who transitioned you? The trust still exists. The trust is designed to outlive you. The trust still owns the house. The trust still owns the car. The trust still has $500,000 in the bank account. Just because you transition, everything remains intact. Your successor takes over and continues to operate. Your children get to benefit. They get to benefit from the house, the money, the cars, everything. Right? Your family never has to go through probate. And that debt that you had, credit cards, student loans, the ICU and the hospital bills and the nursing home and all that stuff, that debt dies with you. Why? Because those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. Those bills, that debt belongs to you, and you die, your debt dies with you. That's what you want. But we got it all backwards. And so once again, our kids are losing their inheritance because we don't have our ish together. We don't have our affairs in order because we bought into the lies. So what you need to do is you need to set up your trust estate now while you're living. Now. So let's continue on. All right. So this is the wealth building formula, you guys. I have 3 pillars here. I have structure, I have credit, and I have invest. So let's break it down. I just told you that it's very important for you to set up a trust estate. So if you do not have trust within your structure, it's time to get restructured. You have to incorporate a trust entity within your structure. So these are the 3 trusts that I recommend, and I'm going to break it down for you. The first one is a business trust. The second one is a family trust. The third one is a tax-exempt nonprofit. So within your current structure, you need to have a for-profit arm and you need to have a nonprofit arm. That is the best way to be structured in order for you to reduce your tax liabilities. Okay? In order for you to efficiently and effectively build generational wealth. Okay? So let's break it down. So the first trust is the business trust. Okay? Now, with the business trust, there's 2 ways that you can operate this trust. The first way that you can operate it is as a business. So you're going to set it up. It's going to be operational, meaning that it is going to offer products and services out here in society. Okay? And you can operate it just like you do a regular LLC or corporation. Okay? A lot of people think that the LLC is the end all be all. An LLC is a statutory entity. It is regulated by the state, which means that the state can shut you down at any point in time and tell you you can't operate. How many times have you seen it to where people's businesses shut down? Okay? It only takes one thing. If you don't go do your annual report, guess what? Your LLC is inactive. You can't do business. Okay? So what you can do is if you don't have an LLC, you can set up a business trust and you can operate your business. Okay? And you're good. You don't have to do those annual reports. You don't have to report to the state or anything like that. Okay? That's the first way that you can use your trust. The second way that you can use your business trust is as a holding company. So that's what I explained to you earlier. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the business trust be the authorized member of your LLC. Okay? The business trust, because it's operating as a holding company, is going to be non-operational, which means that it doesn't offer any products, it doesn't offer any services. So it's uniquely designed to own legal entities. So your business trust is going to be the manager of that LLC, right? And you, because you're the trustee, you're the one who's going to be signing on behalf of that LLC because you're the trustee of the business trust. Okay? And so the business trust, what it does is it actually protects the LLC as well as any equipment or assets that the LLC owns. Okay? Your business is an asset. Okay? A lot of people, I don't know why they don't think that way, but it is. Your business is an asset. Okay? So I need you to start thinking that way. So now what's going to happen is, let's just say that your LLC, right? It generates $100,000. So your LLC, because it's owned by a business trust, all that money can go to the business trust by way of a K-1 distribution, okay? So now that $100,000 went straight to the business trust. So when you file the taxes for the LLC, right, it's a 0 tax liability because 100% of it was distributed. All right. So now the business trust and the family trust are for-profit entities. The beautiful thing that I love about these trust entities is that you spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers versus how we are taxed as individuals, right? So, for example, as an individual, what happens? We're taxed first, then we receive the leftovers as a direct deposit into our bank account. Okay? That's backwards. But we bought into the lie that society gave us. Okay? All right. So now that we, got the leftovers, right? We file our 1040, right? Versus the trust. Remember, the trust can do anything and everything that you can do as a human, okay? So what happens is the trust is going to spend the money first, be taxed on the leftovers, and then file a 1041, right? So that's, once again, remember, you are an individual entity. You file a 1040. The trust is its own separate entity. It is not you. The trust files a 1041. All right. So now that we know and understand this, right? We got 100,000 that just came in. What we gonna do? We're gonna spend the money, right, on what we call OPEX, operating expenses. What does it cost for you to operate the business trust, right? You got all kind of expenses. So let's just say you racked up $30,000 in expenses. So now, obviously, your operating expenses are 100% tax deductible. So out of that 100,000 that you got in income, you're deducting 30, right? And so now you have 70,000 left. That 70,000 that you have left, you got to pay taxes on it, right? And a trust is taxed anywhere between 10% upwards of 37%. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to reduce our taxes down to 0, okay? Or very close to 0. 1, 2, 3, right? So what you're going to do is, and this is one of the things that I love about a trust. A trust issues distributions. Distributions and contributions. We're going to talk about that, okay? I hope that you're taking notes. I really hope that you're taking notes, okay? Because these are gems that I'm dropping. If you think that I'm dropping gems, can you please put some gems in the chat? I'm going to go look in the chat right now. Hold on. Let me look in the chat. I don't see nothing. I don't see no. Okay. All right. Thank you, Leslie. Zoom user. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I see the gems now. I see the gems. Okay, so let's continue. So what's going to happen is a trust can do distributions and contributions, okay? So stick with me. So now what the trust is going to do is it's going to do a distribution to the beneficiary. Distributions are 100% tax deductible, okay? So what happens is what we do is we make the beneficiary of the business trust the family trust. Okay, you following me? So the family trust is the beneficiary of the business trust. Why? Because if you are an entrepreneur business owner, the money that you have coming in from the business needs to be spent on the family. So if you know that, then it's going to be easy for us to flow the money from the business trust into the family trust if the family trust is the beneficiary. So now, remember, we had 100,000, we wrote off 30, we got 70 left that we need to pay taxes on. We decided, hey, we're not paying taxes on the 70,000. We're going to distribute all of it so we don't have to pay taxes. So we distributed 70,000 to the family trust. Now on the business trust, we are done paying taxes, okay? Because we wrote off 30, we distributed 70, there ain't no money left. So we got a 0% tax liability, okay? So now let's move on to the private family trust. So now with a private family trust, right, this is a entity that is a for-profit. So income just came in by way of distribution, right? And so the distribution came in for 70,000. That is income that is going to be taxed to the family trust, okay? So now what is it that we get to do, right? What is it that we get to do with the trust? You could come off mute if you know what we do with the trust. Anybody know?
Buy everything under the sun for the family.
That's a good thing. So we're going to spend the money first and we're taxed on the leftovers. Okay? And so when she say buy everything under the sun, that's exactly what we mean. So if your kids got private college tuition, or boom, that's covered by the trust. Why? Because they're the beneficiaries, so their education is covered, right? If you put your house into the trust, right? All expenses related to that house comes out of the trust because that's a trust asset. So we're talking utilities to keep the light on. We're talking maintenance. We're talking taxes. We're talking grocery in the refrigerator, right? We're talking the mortgage, anything, gas, whatever it is, right? Everything dealing with that house, okay? So whatever other expenses you have, if your kids and you have a life insurance policy, that's also a write-off, right? If you got your car in there, everything dealing with the car, right? So what is it? Gas, maintenance, repairs, car note, all of this stuff, registration, everything, insurance, all of it, right? These are all expenses of the trust. Why? Because the trust owns these assets, okay? And so now we have 70,000 that came in. We go and we spend the money first. And whatever's left over is what we're going to be taxed on, okay? So you're going to spend it down. So let's just say our operating expenses for the family trust is 60,000, right? And so now we got 10,000 left. So that whole 60,000, our OPEX, the 60,000 was a tax deduction out of that 70K income. So now we only got $10,000 that's left, right? So we're going to pay taxes on that 10,000, right? Which only ends up being like 10%, right? Or there's something else that you can do, right? Which I absolutely love, which is a contribution. So just keep in your mind, distribution, contribution. So now we're going to do a contribution. We're going to do a contribution to who? We're going to do a contribution to the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So on the family trust, it's labeled as a charitable contribution, and it's going to go to whatever charity that you want, okay? And it can go to your own charity, okay? All right, so now we're done paying taxes. So we received the 70,000, we deducted 60 from operating expenses, and we did a charitable contribution for 10. We have $0 left. We have a 0% tax liability, okay? Now, our beneficiaries for the family trust are our children, okay? All right, so now let's move on to the next trust, which is the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. That is the trust that received the charitable contribution, but we document it as a donation. So you can document it as a donation, a tithe, or a gift, okay? Documentation is very important. All right, you do not want to mess this up. Documentation, record keeping, very important, okay? So now let's talk about this trust because it's my favorite of all three, right? So now this trust is designated as a 508c1a. So it's very similar to a 501c3, right? But the only difference is that this trust can be labeled as a faith-based organization, a church, a ministry, a school, right? And so you can do it. It could be religious, it could be charitable, it could be educational, okay? Or just traditionally faith-based, okay? So you can operate it however you want, right? And so because of the First Amendment, because of the separation between church and state, you are automatically exempt from federal taxes with this entity. All right, so that means that you are exempt from having to file with the IRS as long as you don't have any income that's coming in that's above $5,000. So it's very vitally important that whatever money that is coming in is labeled as a donation, a tithe, or a gift. Okay? All right. So now this entity is automatically exempt from federal taxes, and you qualify to be exempt from other forms of taxes like state taxes, county taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, right? Just to name a few. So you can qualify to be exempt from those types of taxes as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. So that's why it's so vitally important that you have both the for-profit and the nonprofit. Okay, another thing that I need you to know is that you can donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to this trust. Okay, so let's just say that you're a W-2 employee. Let's just say you make $100,000 per year, right? Annual gross income. The IRS will allow you to donate up to $60,000 or 60% of that annual gross income. So let's just say that you donate $60,000 to the tax exempt nonprofit trust, then you are automatically being taxed on 40% or $40,000 of the $100,000. Do you know how much money you're going to be saving by not having to pay all those taxes, right? And so because you're saving so much money, you can then allocate those funds somewhere else. You can allocate them to real estate or a different investment, or you can park it somewhere where you can grow that money, okay? So it's vitally important for you to be strategic. And so if you're not structured this way, it's time to get restructured. Now let's talk about the second pillar, which is credit, okay? So remember I said a trust can do anything and everything that you can do. So what a trust can do is a trust can build credit. If you could build credit, a trust can build credit, okay? The trust will build credit off of the EIN. So just like your LLCs and corporations build credit, the trust will also be able to build credit, okay? What you need to do is you need to leverage OPM. So you need to leverage a second credit profile. You can't just be only depending on your credit. Your utilization is high and you get low limits, right? That's not what we're going for, right? That's not the goal. That's not how you're going to build wealth, okay? So what you want to do is you want to build business credit, because that business credit is going to put you in a position where your utilization doesn't even matter, right? And you get higher lines of credit like 50,000, 100,000, right? And then what do you get to do with that business credit? You get to actually use that line of credit or strip that credit card and use it for an investment, okay? So with the trust not only qualifies for OPM, other people's money, meaning the bank's money, by the credit, but also nonprofit grants as well, okay? So funding is so important. That's what you want to do, right? You want to use OPM to get the funds that you need for the trust in order to park it somewhere else or acquire the assets, okay? All right, now let's talk about the last pillar here, okay? So the last pillar is invest, you guys. So these are the two assets that I absolutely love the most, okay? And I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to talk about it, okay? So the first one is Index Universal Life Insurance Policy. The second one is real estate. So if you were here at the beginning of the call, you know that I'm a real estate investor, okay? So with that being said, what you want to do is you want to put your, put the money that you're acquiring, right? So from these credit lines and loans, you want to park them into income producing assets, okay? So let's talk about the IUL, okay? So Index Universal Life Insurance Policy. Now, a lot of people think that insurance is supposed to be used when they are dead. But insurance is actually supposed to be used when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance, because you use it during your life. It's not called death insurance where you use it when you're dead. There's a lot of living benefits with life insurance. This is how you are going to build your wealth. This is how you're going to conserve your wealth. This is how you're going to preserve your wealth, okay? So, one of the benefits, right? So these are the benefits. Now, with the life insurance, right? The money that is with this life insurance, right, is tax-free, okay? Your life insurance policy is also protected right? So if you get sued, they're not coming after your life insurance policy. You could have $1 million in that life insurance policy, and the judge can't force you to take the $1 million out of your life insurance, okay? So it's liquid. It's liquid cash that's inside of that life insurance policy, okay? The policy is an asset, okay? So what happens is you want the trust to be the owner of the policy, the payer of the premiums, and the beneficiary of the policy, right? And so now what happens is you got this life insurance policy, and so there's several different sections. So one is like I said, you have the trust as the owner, you are the insured. So that means that your life is insured, okay? So there's two buckets. What the first bucket is a cash value, right? The second one is your death benefit. So if anything happens to you, and let's just say you have $1 million death benefit, then they'll pay out that death benefit, right? And then the cash value is the cash that you're accumulating inside of your life insurance policy. The beautiful thing about this policy that I love absolutely so much is that that cash value is going to be compounding. It's going to be earning compound interest. Okay, that is extremely powerful. This is how you're going to grow wealth risk-free. When I say risk-free, I mean risk-free. Why? Because the money that's inside of the life insurance, right? Inside of the cash value, it's protected. So let's just talk about it, right? How does the money get in there? Well, you're paying your premiums, right? Let's just say your premium is $100, right? $20 goes to the carrier, and that's the cost of the insurance. $80 goes straight to your cash value, okay? And now that $80 is going to earn compound interest. How? Well, it's actually going to earn compound interest because it's mirroring the market. How is it mirroring the market? You see it in the name. Okay, in the name it says Index Universal Life. The index is referring to an indice in the stock market. So the stock market has many indices. It has the Dow Jones, it has the NASDAQ, and it has the S&P 500. The S&P 500 it means Standard and Poor 500. Okay, that's what S&P stands for, okay? And it tracks the top 500 companies in this country, in the United States of America. So that is your Google, your Facebook, your Amazon, your Berkshire, okay? All right, and so now on average, the stock market gives you 8 to 10%, okay, on average. So let's just say that the stock market did 9.5, right? What's going to happen is the insurance carrier is going to match what the stock market did, what the S&P 500 did, and they're going to give you a 9.5 return on your cash value. Okay, that is extremely powerful. So now that $80 is compounding and it's earning more money and more money and more money and more money. That is exactly what you need to do. You need to park your money in a place where it is going to grow. Every single dollar that you deploy, that dollar needs to go out and work. That dollar needs to go out and bring back friends. 10 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents, right? And so that's what you need to be doing in order to grow the money. A lot of us, we're in this mindset where we think that we have to work for money. We're so wrapped up in the 9 to 5 because we have been institutionalized. They taught us from when we were in kindergarten to high school to college how to sit down and be a good boy and a good girl and go ahead and, stay stuck in a building for 8 hours, right? And so now we're institutionalized where we think that our 9 to 5 is our end all be all, right? I retired from nursing at 31 years old because I didn't want to be stuck in that concrete box. And so you too can retire young, right? You can retire early. We don't have to be subject to what society wants for us. Society wants us to work 40 hours for 40 years, retire when we're 65 years old, And then at 65, what are we going to do? Collect Social Security. Social Security is not going to be available. Trust me. It says it on the website. Okay? So we can't depend on the government. So what we need to do is create our own retirement plan. What we need to do is remove ourselves from the rat race, remove ourselves from paycheck to paycheck, have a mindset shift to where we want financial freedom and we want it now. We want location freedom and we want it now. Right now, not later, not 65 when we get to then be able to vacation. Right? And so because it takes a mindset shift, then we know that we have to do things differently and we have to do things unconventionally. Because if we continue to subscribe to what society wants for us, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting. It's time to step out of that box. It's time to get off of the wheel and take control of our future. So that's why we need to be investing. That's why we need to acquire assets. That's why we need to do something unorthodox, which is create our own estate now. We need to set up our future. You cannot be walking around here saying that you're building generational wealth if you don't have the tools for generational wealth. So, with that being said, the Index Universal Life Insurance Policy, that is a good way for you to park your money and let it grow. Okay? And one thing that I love about this policy is that if the stock market crash, it's risk-free, right? So you'll just earn 0 or 1%, but your money is not going to go with the market, right? So it's protected. That is what you want to do. You want to protect everything, everything. Okay? So now what you need to be doing is, and I'll talk about this in just a minute. Let's talk about real estate because that's my favorite thing. Okay? That is my favorite thing. And I get a little touchy, feely, a little emotional when it comes to real estate because real estate was my way out. Okay? Like, a lot of people don't know this about my story, right? But when I was growing up, my parents were squatters. I did not realize that until I was in my 20s. I did not realize that we were literally living in an abandoned building with no utilities. When I tell you I could not stand my parents because I'm like, why the hell we can't have light and running water? It's because we were living in an abandoned building. They couldn't put the utilities on. So it was frustrating for me. So I went out and got a job at 14 years old. I lied on the job application and said I was 16 because McDonald's was hiring at 16 and not 14. But I knew that I had to make a way out, right? Or I had to at least help my parents. So at 14, I started working at McDonald's. And then my parents got on Section 8. And that was a blessing. That was a blessing because we actually moved into a place that we could cut on utilities. So it was extremely frustrating. And I knew that the way that I was going to make it out of poverty was doing the opposite of what my parents did. My parents didn't have a college degree. So I'm like, okay, college is the way. College is the way. College is the way. I can't wait to go to college. I can't wait to turn 18. But then when I started working in my career, I hated it. I hated it. Why? Because I'm a leader and people was telling me what to do. I was frustrated. Like I told you, I couldn't even take care of my baby. Why? Because I had to make a paycheck so I can cover the rent. I was in the rat race. And I told myself, I gave myself 10 years. I said, girl, just give yourself 10 years in this nursing career. And I retired in 8 years at 31 years old. And that was by way of real estate. Now I have a 7-figure portfolio. Thank God. But that was only because I was so determined. And I said, I'm not going to wait till I'm 65. I had coworkers that they're like, I'm like, why are you still working? My coworkers is like, oh, because if I wait till I'm 67 and a half, I'll get an extra $100. They bought into that lie. So I think that business ownership, entrepreneurship, investing, acquiring assets is your way out. So let's talk about real estate because that's my whole life, right? So when it comes to real estate, what I need you to know is that your trust can own real estate. Just like how you can own real estate, your trust can also own real estate, okay? Just like how you can get a mortgage, the trust can also get a mortgage. So what we're going to do is we are going to put the trust in a position to where it sustain itself. The last thing that you're going to do is go ahead and work your 9 to 5 and pour your paycheck into the trust. That's not what we're doing. Okay? You need to put the trust in a position to where it sustains itself. That's how this thing is going to be generational. Right? You want it to last many generations. So the trust needs to sustain itself, okay? So you're going to acquire assets for the trust. Now, let's talk about this because how are you going to get the money? Please. Okay, one thing I need to tell you, right? My first property, I got 100% financing. I did not use $1 of my own money. That house that I bought, it was $89,000. And the hard money lender put up the entire $89,000. When I flipped that property, I sold it for $235,000. Okay? 25 years old. So once I made 6 figures off of one house, I knew that this was the way. All right? So with that being said, when it comes to real estate, you can get 100% financing. Okay. It's going to be, you got to be strategic, straightforward. Okay. So one strategy that I want you to know about is this one. Let's just say that you get a multifamily. Okay. Y'all still with me? I feel like I'm by myself over here. Let me see.
Yep. Loud and clear.
Loud and
Okay.
clear.
Okay. All right, awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's talk about this, okay? Because I love real estate. So with the real estate, what you're going to do is you're going to acquire a multifamily, okay? Like you got one roof, you got 4 to 5 units, okay? So you definitely don't want to just do one house, one unit, okay? Now, let's just say that you acquire a 5-plex, okay? Now with this 5-plex, what you're going to do is you are going to get a DSCR loan, okay? That stands for debt service coverage ratio loan, okay? It's a very popular mortgage that you can get for an investment property. A trust can get a DSCR, okay? So now with the DSCR, let's just say that they'll give you 80% of the purchase price, okay? It varies based on the lender, okay? But industry standard is 30, is 80, 85, okay? So let's just say you get approved and they're going to give you 80%, okay? So now you got 80% of the purchase price. Where are you going to get the other 20%, right? Well, if you rewind just a little bit, remember we said OPM. OPM stands for other people's money. You are going to use the bank's money, okay? And the reason why you're going to use the bank's money is because the bank is using your money. So if the bank is using your money, if the bank is leveraging you, then you also need to leverage the bank. Why? Because where is your money right now? Your money is sitting inside of your checking account at Wells Fargo. And what is Wells Fargo doing? Wells Fargo is pimping your money out. Wells Fargo is lending out your money for student loans, for credit cards, for mortgages, for all kind of stuff, right? And they're getting rich. And a lot of people think that the banks are getting rich by giving out these loans and charging high interest. But if you really do your research and your due diligence, you will see that the bank's number one asset, their number one liquid asset is life insurance policies. So, and it's called BOLI, okay? So look it up. BOLI, BOLI, bank-owned life insurance, okay? So if the banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, you know, if they're getting rich off of using OPM, other people's money, your money, if their number one asset is life insurance, then your number one asset should also be life insurance, okay? That's one. Two, if they're using OPM, you should also be using OPM. So if they're using your hard-earned cash that's sitting inside of your bank account, then you should also be able to leverage them and get that line of credit so that you can use it. So now you have a business line of credit. Let's just say you got a line of credit for $50,000, right? What you're going to do is you're going to strip that line of credit. Now you got $50,000 in liquid cash, right? Off of credit. And the first thing that you're going to do with that $50,000 is not put it down on real estate. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to funnel it into your life insurance policy. So that $50,000, you're going to make a payment for inside of your index universal life insurance policy. What's going to happen is your cash value is going to go up by $50,000. Remember, the S&P 500 just made 9.5%. So you're going to get 9.5% return on that $50,000. Okay? That is beautiful. But last time I checked, you need that $50,000 to put down on real estate. So what you're going to do is you're going to request a loan from the carrier, okay? You're going to request a loan from the life insurance company, and what they're going to do is they're going to look at your cash value, and they're going to be like, okay, John has, $50,000 in his cash value. So what we can do is we can lend him $49,000 out of our own money, out of our reserves. So the life insurance company is going to issue you a loan, but they're going to take the money out of their bank account, out of their reserves. Your $50,000 is still sitting inside of your cash value earning compound interest. And now they just did a direct deposit and sent $49,000 back into your bank account. Okay? So that $50,000 is already inside of the IUL working, bringing back friends. So now you have the $49,000 inside of your bank account. What you're now going to do is you're going to the closing table. Why? Because you got that 20%. So now you're using that $49,000 as the rest of the down payment for the real estate. You just acquired real estate 0% down. Okay? You use 0% of your own money. You use 100% of OPM. 80% came from the DSCR, and the other 20% came from the business line of credit, right? And so now you acquired this piece of real estate, okay? You got a multifamily, 5 units, right? So let's just say each one is cash flowing $2,000. That's $10,000 every single month on the first of every single month. You have cash flow coming in for the trust because the trust is the owner of the real estate, right? So now let me ask you this question. I'm telling you this is a pop quiz. Okay, it's the first of the month, right? And you just got paid by your 5 tenants, and you just got $10,000. Where is the first place, or what are you going to do with that $10,000? I need to hear it.
Put it in your life insurance
IUL.
policy.
Index,
Put it in your life
index,
insurance.
index.
All right, does anybody like coconut water?
Hell yeah.
I
Yeah.
like coconut water. Okay, me too. I thought I was the only one. All right, cool. All right, guys. Oh, well, you know what? It's 8:55. Y'all want to just wrap it up here?
Hell
No.
no.
Okay. All right, cool. Okay, all right. Let me begin to land this plane. Okay, so all of y'all right, and y'all got the A+ and 100% and valedictorian and all of that. Okay, I'm so happy because the first place that you put that $10,000 is in your index universal life insurance policy. Okay, now let's talk about it. Remember, the $50,000, you done parked it in 2 places. That $50,000 is in your IUL working, making compound interest, and then that $50,000 is inside of the real estate and it's cash flowing. Okay, and so now you getting $10,000 per month. That $10,000 is going to go straight into your IUL, and now your IUL it has $60,000. That $60,000 is earning compound interest. All right, but you need to borrow out that money. So let's just say you want to borrow out $8,500. You don't need the whole 10. You borrow out $8,500, and you go and pay the line of credit. You go and pay the DSCR. And then whatever is left over is your income, your cash flow that goes straight into the trust fund. That is how the trust is going to sustain itself. That is how you're going to build generational wealth that actually lasts many generations. Okay? We are not using our 9-to-5 money or our business income or anything like that. The trust is going to be able to stand on its own. Okay? And we're going to have cash flowing properties or assets. That's the most important thing. All right. So that's it with real estate. That's it with invest. Okay. Let me see. Is there anything else I want to say here? I don't think so. All right. Let's keep going. Now let's talk about one thing. Let's see here. Okay. So let's talk about something that we never asked ourselves. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever asked yourself how you're going to transfer the wealth? Let me know. Have you ever asked yourself that question?
Yes.
Okay, one person.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm proud of you. Good. So that is exactly what you want, right? So let's break it down. You need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. And I'm going to say it again because it's so powerful. I need it to be ingrained. Okay, I'm planting seeds here. So you need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing, but you control everything. That is what we label as stewardship. Stewardship is where you are a good steward of the wealth, right? That means you are directing the wealth. That means you're creating a distribution system. That means that you are maintaining the wealth, right? That is what stewardship is. You are responsible. Why? Because you're the trustee, because you're the fiduciary, okay? So that is what you need to be doing versus what you're doing right now. What you're doing right now is you're operating in ownership versus stewardship. You own the wrong ship, okay? And your boat is sinking and you think it's not. The reason why is because you are so proud to be the owner of what? I'm proud to be the owner of this house. I'm proud to be the owner of the car in the driveway. I'm proud to be the owner of that checking account with 6 figures in it, right? You so proud to be the owner, but you being in that position to where you're the owner is putting you in a position to where, like I said, you're low-hanging fruit. where anybody can snatch it away from you. Can you just imagine somebody knocking on your door at 9 o'clock in the morning and telling you and your kids that you got to get out because they seizing the house? So at the end of the day, right, you have to understand that that house that you live in, if you didn't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So what you truly want is not ownership. What you truly want is control, right? You want control of that house while you're living, because that house is designed to outlive you. The trust is designed to outlive you. So it's so vitally important that you need to be operating in stewardship versus ownership, which is how you operating now. Okay, so we need to get out of that way of how we're operating. Okay, so now when it comes to transferring wealth, right? I don't know what type of distribution system you got going on, but the way that you want to transfer wealth is by way of a trust certificate unit. That is what a TCU stands for. TCU, Trust Certificate Unit. What is it, right? Okay, so a TCU is the same thing as a stock certificate. So you know how a stock certificate represents ownership in a corporation? A TCU represents beneficial interest in a trust. Okay, so when you set up a trust and you fund the trust is going to create 100 trust certificates. And then it's up to you as the trustee to be able to distribute those trust certificate units. Okay, so let's just say that you got 5 beneficiaries, right? So, and I'm one of them. Thank you, God. So I'm one of your beneficiaries. Okay. So let's just say that you wanted to distribute the TCUs equally. You got 5 beneficiaries, there's 100 TCUs, you're going to equally distribute 20 TCUs to each person. Okay. So now I have 20 TCUs. Okay. Now, it represents beneficial interest in a trust, right? And so beneficial interest is your entire net worth of the trust. So let's just say that the trust is worth $1 million. It has $1 million, in rental property, right? And so that's the net worth. Well, if I have 20 TCUs in this trust, then that means I have 20% of beneficial interest. And if the net worth is $1 million, that means that I have equivalent of my TCUs to $200,000. So if that trust was to be shut down tomorrow, then I'm going to get a payout of $200,000 because I'm just going to cash in my TCUs. So the TCUs are going to go to your children, to your beneficiaries, to the individuals that you want to inherit the assets that you have placed inside of your TCUs. That is how you're going to transfer wealth, not whatever ghetto system that society has brought up for us, right? So now the next thing is preservation, right? A lot of us, we don't even ask ourselves this question either, right? How am I going to preserve this wealth, right? I just made $1 million. How am I going to preserve this wealth, right? And so how many times have we seen it to where athletes, actors, actresses, famous families, celebrities, how many times have we seen it to where they blow all the dough in their lifetime, or it doesn't last the second generation, or their kids end up blowing all the money? We've seen it so many times. Why? Because they didn't have the tools of preservation. So you cannot walk around here saying that you're building generational wealth if you don't have the tools. So the tools that you need in order to preserve the wealth that you're building right now so hard, you're working so hard. There's 2 tools. One is a trust, which we've been speaking about all night. The second tool is the life insurance policy. Why? So you have to understand that the trust, it insures all of its assets. So the trust has a car, it has automobile insurance. The trust has a house, it has homeowners insurance. The trust got liquid cash in the bank, it got FDIC insurance. You are a human asset in the trust organization. So the trust needs to insure you. So because you're the trustee, right, you're the most important person in the trust. If anything were to happen to you, the trust is devastated. The trust is experiencing a loss. The trust needs to be compensated for that loss. So the trust is going to insure you, all of the trustees, all of the beneficiaries, and all of the future beneficiaries. So if anything happens to you, then that death benefit that's associated with your life insurance policy is going to go straight to the trust. So let's just say you got a $2 million life insurance policy, right? That death benefit goes straight to the trust, and the trust is now replenished with $2 million.
Wow.
Okay. So the trust, like I said, the trust is going to be the owner of the life insurance policy. So you as the trustee has full control over that life insurance policy. The trust is going to pay the premiums either monthly, quarterly, or annually. The trust is going to be the beneficiary. So if anything happens to you, that death benefit, that direct deposit goes to the trust fund. You are going to be the insured. Okay? And the trust is going to not only insure you, but if you have a co-trustee, they're insured. If you have beneficiaries, they're insured. If you have future beneficiaries, which we call trust fund babies, they're insured too. So we need to normalize trust fund babies in our community. So what does that look like? If you have a baby that is born into the trust organization, when that baby is 30 days old, you as the trustee, you're going to take out a life insurance policy on that baby, an index universal life insurance policy, an IUL. And now out of the trust funds, you're going to be paying that premium every single month for that trust fund baby. And now let's just say that that trust fund baby grows up, right? They grow up and now they're 18 years old. What happens when you're 18? You going to college, you moving out the house, you getting a car. There's so much stuff that's happening. So let's just say that that trust fund baby says, okay, it's time for me to get a car. They could easily, their normal process is to go down to the dealership to get into one of those expensive car loans, right? Where they're buying a car for $30,000, they start paying the dealership $1,000 a month. So that's their normal process that they will have to take. But they're not normal, right? Because last time I checked, they're a trust fund baby in a trust organization, which means that beneficiary, all they have to do is go to the trust and say, hey, can I get a loan for $30,000 so that I can go buy a car? And so you as the trustee, you're going to be like, okay, here, let me write you a check for $30,000, and you hand it to that trust fund baby, right? And now that trust fund baby does what? They go to the dealership and they buy their car cash. And now they're going to turn around and they're going to start paying the trust $300 a month, right? Something very simple. Why? And that's beneficial for them versus paying the dealership $1,000 a month. Why? Because they get to benefit from being a trust fund baby of a trust, right? And so now what's going to happen is, fast forward into the future, let's just say a year into the future, the trust fund baby is like, ugh, I don't want to pay the $300 a month to the trust anymore. Okay, that's fine. Why? Because it was a risk-free loan. So that trust fund baby decided they're gonna default on the $300 a month loan, right? And it's completely okay because the money did not come from the trust fund. The money came from the life insurance policy of that trust fund baby. Remember, that policy was taken out when that baby was 30 days old. That money has been compounding and compounding and compounding. 18 years into the future, there's $1 million in there. So what happened is the trustee, as soon as that trust fund baby asked for $30,000, that trustee contacted the life insurance company, requested a loan for $30,000. The life insurance company went and did a direct deposit into the trust fund, and then that trustee wrote a check for $30,000 to that trust fund baby. That was a risk-free loan because that loan doesn't need to be paid back. Why?
Wow.
The loan
Wow.
doesn't need to be paid back because it's automatically deducted from the death benefit. So remember, there's a death benefit. So that $30,000 is going to be removed from the death benefit. And when that trust fund baby transitions, that death benefit goes straight into the trust minus the 30,000. So that is the process of preservation of wealth. That is what we need to be doing. This is what I'm telling you. We cannot be walking around here talking about building generational wealth. That's a damn lie. If you don't have the two tools, which is a trust that freaking owns everything and life insurance policy on everyone associated with it, you're not building generational wealth, because I guarantee you it's not going to last or even touch the second generation, because they're going to blow the money. That's why you need to have this distribution system. You need to be running your family like this, like a family office. Okay, so with that being said, these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do? That is a really good book that teaches you the connection between trust and life insurance, okay? It is so vitally important, and it's something that we need to activate right away, okay? The second one is the one that you see on the screen, which is The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2, right? That teaches you about trusteeship, how to actually operate a trust, right? Let me tell you, do you know how many business owners that I talk to every single day? I talked to a lady today, oh my gosh, and she told me, oh, Christine, I have 2 LLCs and I never even created an operating agreement. Like, what? You don't have an operating agreement? Do you know that you're supposed to have a meeting for your LLCs? Are you doing meetings? No, we're not operating our entities the right way, right? And so operation, documentation is so important, okay? The next one is family wealth, which is, it teaches you how to run your family like a business, right? You need to be running your family like a business, meaning that you are the CEO of your family. Your spouse is the CFO of your family. Your kids, those are secretaries. They filing papers, they shredding, they doing everything that they need to do. That's how you need to be running your family, like a business. And the last one is the Complete Book of Trust. Remember, at the beginning of the call, I told you guys that there's hundreds of different types of trust. So what you guys need to do is you guys need to choose the right trust for you. Okay? Do your research. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys a quick little video. If I could pause this. Okay. So I want to show you a quick little video of someone that took action on the information that I shared tonight, right? it's vitally important that you guys set up a trust, and it could be your new way of doing business. It could be your new way of cash flowing. It could be your new way of making profit. It could be a new way of saving on taxes. It could be your new way of leaving an inheritance for your children, right? You need to treat this like a big business. You need to treat this like a Google, like an Amazon, like a Facebook. Not like no little small mom and pop shop. This is not what that is. Okay, this is larger than life. And one thing that I always get, that I always hear of is, oh, you need $1 million in order to start a trust. No, you don't. That's the biggest, fattest lie ever. I just told you. You set up your contract, you go to the bank, they tell you you only need $100 in order to open up that trust fund. So stop believing the lies that they're telling you out there that you need $1 million, you need to be a millionaire, you need it all. That's all lies. If you have a house, if you got cash money, if you have assets that you want to leave for your kids, even if you don't have any assets, right? The first step is you setting up a trust so you can get the assets. It's important. So let me show you this quick little video.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while. And, you know, there are a number of people offering trust these days. And, you know, I guess that's the big thing, you know, don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
So that's someone who took action on the information. So what I say is let's work together, you guys. So I do have a program that teaches you step by step how to set up the 3 trusts that I was talking about, okay? So the business trust, the family trust, and the nonprofit, okay? So I have 3 different offers here. The first one is do it yourself. Do it yourself is where you get access to the course. The course is on demand. You get lifetime action and access, and you get to do it yourself, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to watch the video modules, and then you download the trust templates, and then you go ahead and set up that trust indenture yourself, okay? You definitely need to learn how to do this on your own so you can know how to operate a trust. There's so many people that are intimidated by what a trust is. And another thing is that a trust is the most powerful entity in the world, like in the entire world. They use trust everywhere, right? Europe, UK, everywhere, Caribbean, South America, Central America, everywhere, right? So you definitely need to, like I said, if you don't have a trust, you need to incorporate a trust, okay? So you get lifetime access to the course, you get access to the 3 templates, and then you also get access to our resources and our ebooks. So the ebooks are the books that I mentioned earlier, okay? Like What Would the Rockefellers Do, right? And so some of those books, you can buy them for $800 if you want, or you can get the electronic version inside of the program. Okay, as far as resources, we give you everything that you need in order to operate a trust efficiently and effectively, meaning you need to have meetings for your trust. We give you the templates. You need to transfer your assets. We give you the quit claim deeds, the bill of sales, right? You need to open up a bank account. We show you step by step how to open up a bank account and what you need, right? And so it's so vitally important for you to be able to have those resources readily available so that you don't have to be figuring it out, okay? We also have a community, which is the most important thing. We have over 1,100 trustees in our community, and you guys get lifetime access to those individuals, right? Those are like-minded individuals that have been operating in trusteeship for 2, 3, 4 years, right? And so they are in your state, they're in your city, they're in your town, okay? They're literally your neighbors. So we have a private Facebook community. We also have a Telegram chat, right? The chat is blowing up, okay? So you can go ahead and put your questions there. We have announcements. We have all kind of stuff, okay? So the do-it-yourself, the course is only $997. The second option is done with you. Done with you is where we're going to show up live on Zoom, okay? So just like how we're showing up live on Zoom right now, and we have 40 to 50 people, it's the same thing. So we show up live on Zoom for the workshops, okay? The workshop is 1 week long. It's Monday through Friday from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? So let me break down what each day looks like. Monday, what we do is we focus on the business trust. So I'm going to pull up the business trust, which is 50 pages. I'm going to break down every single paragraph of the trust. Why? Because I need you to know and understand the contents of the trust. That is how you're going to feel empowered to know, yeah, I'm confident. I can definitely set up this trust. I can definitely operate this trust because I know what's inside of the trust, right? And so we break down every single paragraph. I show you how to customize the trust, tailor it to your business. And then from there, we dive into Q&A. So what I do is I am going to go ahead and answer every single question that you have live, okay? And the beautiful thing about being inside of the workshop is that people are asking questions that you didn't even know you wanted to know the answer to. So just being in that environment that we cultivate is just putting you on the next level because you're learning more, okay? Now, it comes with the course, so you still get lifetime access to the course, but you also get lifetime access to the workshops. We do the workshops every 4 weeks, okay? So it's once a month. So now, on day 2, we focus on the family trust. So we break down every single paragraph of the family trust, and then we dive into Q&A. On day 3, we focus on the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So we break down every single paragraph. We dive into Q&A. I show you guys how to get a tax-exempt EIN number with the IRS. And then some of you guys want to operate it as a ministry. I show you how to become ordained, okay? And then on day 4, we focus on business. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that EIN number for the business trust. Then I show you how to get a bank account for the trust and the operations of banking and how to have a board meeting. And then we go through the promissory note so that you guys can learn how to use that instrument when it comes to moving money in and out of the trust by way of a loan, okay? You do not pay taxes on loans, so you want to learn how to move money in and out of the trust, okay? And then the last thing that we do is one of our educators comes in and teaches you how to build business credit and get business funding. That is all about OPM. When I tell you we are thorough, we are thorough, okay? So you're gonna learn how to establish the business credit, and then our funding team comes in and teaches you how to become credible so you can get the funding that you need so that you can acquire the assets that you need, okay? And then we dive into Q&A. And then Friday is the last day. So on Friday, we focus on assets, okay? So the first thing that we do is we take an inventory of the assets that we have so we know which assets are going to remain in the trust and which assets are going to remain out of the trust, okay? And then from there, I show you how to transfer real estate into the trust. So what I do is I go through the quitclaim deed, how to fill it out, and where to record it with the county recorder's office. Then we focus on the vehicles. So I show you step by step how to put your car into the trust, how to fill out your bill of sale, and how to submit it with the DMV so that you can retitle the vehicle. And then we focus on the businesses where we do a business purchase agreement so that you guys know what that process looks like so you can remove all of the liability from that LLC, okay? And then you're going to fill out the articles of organization so that you remove yourself from the Secretary of State and you add the business trust. And then the very last thing that we do in the workshop is I have an educator who comes in and she teaches about the infinite banking. So the infinite banking is where you're going to be your own bank by setting up the index universal life insurance policies that are going to be owned by the trust. Okay, so she teaches you step by step how to create that whole entire system, right, and how to get your policies in order so that you can begin the conservation and preservation of wealth. Okay, it's on a next level. So with that being said, the done with you is the workshop is only $2,500. Okay, and the next workshop is next week. So it's literally next week, Monday through Friday. We're gonna hit the ground running. So you definitely need to be there. And then the last option is done for you. So these are for our individuals who are, you know, not tech savvy, or they're too busy, or they want to make sure that everything is done correctly, or they don't want to set up the trust by themselves, right? And so we will set up the trust for you. So we set up all three trusts: the business trust, the family trust, and the nonprofit. And then we'll go ahead and apply for your EINs, and we'll transfer all of your assets into those three trusts. You get individualized support, and you get extended support as well, and your trusts are customized. So the done for you is actually $7,500. So we reduced it from $10,000 to $7,500. So all you have to do is just go to our website, which I'll show you. It's www.wealthytrustee.com. And if you have any questions, then you can definitely text us back on the number that you received in order to get into this webinar. You can also visit us on social media, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, right? And so for those of you guys who are on the call, what I want to do is I want to offer you 20% off. And it's going to be only in the next 24 hours. So we're literally right now at 9:27 EST all the way until tomorrow at 9:27 EST. You can go ahead and enjoy 20% off. Okay, so all you have to do is use the discount code TRUST20. It's all one word, right? Trust and then the number 20, and then you'll be able to take 20% off of the enrollment. So now what I want to do is I want to show you what a trust looks like so that you can get a visual. I'm a visual person. I've always been a visual person. So let me show you. Okay, so this is just one of our trust templates, and I just want to show you that everything that you see in red is what we customize. Okay, so this is one of our indentures, and this is how you're going to set up the trust. So like I told you, when you get into the program, I am the one that breaks down every single paragraph in this trust, okay? It's very important for me to be thorough and to teach you what's inside of the trust so you know how to operate it. That's the most important thing, okay? And so I'll show you guys what the program looks like. So this is the actual program, okay? So like I told you, it has the video modules. So the first section is trust entity, where you learn what a trust is, who are the contributors, so grantor, trustee, beneficiary, successors, protectors, the benefits types. And then you learn how to set up the tax exempt trust. You learn how to set up the family trust. So we go through declaration, bylaws, schedules. You learn how to set up the business trust. Then we go through tax strategies so that you can operate tax exempt, so that you can know the difference between the for-profit and the nonprofit, and so you can determine what distributable net income is. And then we get into asset protection, where you're going to take an inventory of your asset. Then you're going to learn how to create a bank account, brokerage account, how to transfer your house, your car, your policies, your businesses, and how to have board meetings. Then we go into wealth creation, where you learn how to set up the credit and how to invest in the market and how to do the infinite banking. We get into preservation of wealth with the legacy crest, and then we have the resources and ebooks. So that is it, you guys. The webinar is over. I do want to answer any questions that you guys might have. And thank you so much for staying for the whole entire time. So a lot of you guys stayed until the very end. So if y'all have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll be able to answer them. I know I kind of went over. It's 9:30. So the first hand that I see is Samuel. Hey, Samuel.
How are you tonight?
Wonderful. How are you?
I am grateful. I went to get the Done For You Trust and I saw the two payments. The one said payments, one said paid in full, and then I saw the affirm. I wasn't clear on what was the difference if I did the paid in full, if that just came off of my card one shot, or if I did the monthly, then it wasn't very clear to me. Could you
Oh,
explain
yes.
that a little?
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and explain that. So we do have payment plan options that are available. Those are for individuals that cannot pay in full at this moment. And so you can do the payment plan and it'll break it up into four payments. But we don't render services until you're paid in full. So that means that it'll take 3 months for you to be paid in full. And then after you're paid in full, then that's when we will start to render services. So you just have to determine if you want to pay in full and get started right away, or if you want to wait for the payment plan to be done.
I need it now.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Samuel. So I'm excited to assist you along this journey, okay? Thank you for asking that good question. All right, next we have Jerome. Hey, Jerome.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Good, good. It's my bedtime.
Oh yeah. I've heard of a similar structure to this. They use a private foundation for the charity as opposed to the 508c1a. What are the pros and cons between a private foundation and the 508?
So the private foundation, I love the private family foundation. So there's just two major differences. So the first one is that you have to go down the 501c3 route. So it's not automatically tax exempt. You have to apply with the IRS in order to be tax exempt. There's a lot of restrictions, meaning scrutiny with your documentation in order to maintain that status. And then also you have restrictions when it comes to speaking about political issues and stuff like that. So that's one. The second thing is that you are with the foundation, you have to disperse 5% to a charity, okay, or to another organization. So 5% at least minimum has to go out automatically. So that's the main difference. With a 508, you're automatically exempt, so you don't have to apply. And then you do not have to disperse 5% to any charity. You are the charity.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking that good question, Jerome. All right. Next, we had the wheelchairpreneur. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm splendid.
Great, great, great. So I got a lot of questions, but I'm gonna try to keep them brief. So the first one is, let me get my notepad. Hold on. So, all right, here we go. So, do you like a LLC in the trust, or do you like the? And when I say do you like, I mean which one do you prefer? LLC in the trust or trust doing business on its own to kind of circumvent the state fees and all that good stuff.
You said, do I like an LLC in the trust? Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
LLC in the trust or just the trust doing business as the trust.
It depends. If you already have an existing LLC, then and you don't want to dissolve it, you want to continue to operate that business as is, then you're going to put that LLC into the trust. So everyone's situation is very unique. If you don't have an existing LLC, then you don't have to get one, you just set up a business trust. So
Right.
it just depends.
Right, but at that point, when you're ready to build business credit or get funding, you will have to register the trust with the state. Is that correct?
No, you don't. So it doesn't have to be registered with the state in order to build business credit.
Oh, okay, great. So second question, I'm in a wheelchair, that's why my business is wheelchairpreneur. So right now, the way everything's set up, like I am my parents' beneficiary. So the deed is in their name now. When they pass, it's gonna come to me. So is it better for them to have a trust and then me to have a trust for it to go into, or can I just set up a trust and they transfer the property now and they're just trustees on my trust?
Yeah, the second option is the best option. If you just want to set up one trust, then you can set it up and then they're the trustees for right now. And
Cool.
and you will be the successor.
And then the last one is, at what point do you recommend or should we set up trust for children as well? And if so, when should we do that?
Yeah, so it is a good option. I would say initially if you're building like a brand for your child or your child, or like if they're like an author or a YouTuber or something like that, then they can definitely have one not now, like while they're a minor. If not, then it will be later on in the future. You can set up a trust for your descendant, and then you can make their trust the beneficiary of yours.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking those really good questions. All right. Next, we have Earl.
Hey, what's going on, Christina?
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. I just want to say you like the Kyrie Irving of trust funds. You got so many moves, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. I really admire your Saquon Barkley-ness. That was awesome. So
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. I like that.
all right, so I have multiple C corporations.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I wanted to ask, do I need to set up a trust fund for each one of my C corporations?
That's a really good question. So I would separate it between high liability and low liability corporation. So it just depends on the activity of the corporation.
Okay. Next question is that because the trust fund has its own EIN and the C corporation has their own EIN, will I be able to build business credit in both, whether
Yeah.
that's through cash flow or like how would you do that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, so you have to understand that these are two separate entities. So just because the entity is owned by another one doesn't mean that it's restricted from building business credit. So any entity that has an EIN can build business credit. So the trust can do it and the corporations can do it.
Okay, so I can like double dip on, well, not double dip, but yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Every single, and I will tell you right now, it's easier for a corporation to get funding because of statutory. So because you can look it up on the Secretary of State and stuff like that, it's easier. So you definitely, for all of your entities, you want to be building credit.
okay. And when it gets down into what you were saying with the life insurance, I think the smartest way for me to go is like while I have parents living on my side and while I have parents living on my wife's side, being that they're older, to just do the life insurance on them because the expectancy of them living longer than me and my wife will be shorter. But if they have health problems or stuff going on or whatever else like that, like is that difficult to do uh considering?
That's a really good question. So, with the life insurance policies, you do have to take a medical, and if they have like some type of health, histories or concerns, it doesn't disqualify them. So people with like a history of cancer or diabetes or high cholesterol, high blood pressure, they still qualify for the life insurance. So you just want to get policies on everyone. So if your parents qualify, then that's great. You definitely want to, and you just want your trust to be the owner of their policies.
Okay, one more question before I go.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I don't know if I said. Okay, so when it comes down to buying the actual product, you said that if we do the plan, we don't get to start it until afterwards, and until everything is paid for. If we do it now and we decide to upgrade later, is there any consideration with what we already spent out, or we just got to start from square one?
Yes, you're so correct. So you can upgrade at any point in time, and all you have to pay the difference between the program. So if you sign up for the do-it-yourself with $99.97, and then you decide that you want to take the workshop, you just pay the difference.
Awesome. I appreciate your time.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Earl. All right, next we have Bernard.
How you doing tonight?
I'm fantastic, Bernard. How are you?
Couldn't be better. I appreciate the sacrifice that you're making, sharing all of this knowledge. It's something I never knew growing up. I wish I had, but I appreciate what you're doing for us.
Thank you
Uh,
so much for saying that. I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me.
um,
I'm on my God-given mission, so I'm gonna do
all
whatever
praises.
I do.
Yeah. Okay. I got a quick question. I noticed on one of your slides, your asset protection slide, the trust gives you protection against foreclosure. Um, if you put your house in a trust, what happens to the mortgage since they can't foreclose on you?
So
Or
you
can
still,
they?
yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so when you transfer your property into the trust and it has a mortgage, the mortgage remains intact. You still do need to pay the mortgage, but now the
Okay.
payer of that mortgage is going to be the trust versus you. Okay, so it's going to be the financial responsibility of the trust. So once that asset goes into the trust, then those funds for the mortgage is going to come out of the trust fund. Okay. And you don't have to worry about deeding the property into the trust because your mortgage, one, is going to remain intact and it's still going to remain on your credit. Okay, so you want to be mindful of that. But it doesn't trigger a due on sale clause because you
Mhm.
transferred it from your personal name into the trust. Okay, so it's protected from the lender trying to accelerate the loan to be due. And another thing is that because it is in an irrevocable trust, that house is protected just in case they try to foreclose. So meaning that they can attempt to foreclose, and it doesn't mean that they are one able to serve the trust because they can't find the trust, right? They can't find the trust, or they don't know who's associated with the trust. They don't know how to serve the trust, right? So that's what protects the property from that creditor, which is that mortgage lender, to come after the property or even you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, one more quick question. Since I'm just learning about this, would you suggest setting up a trust now and then learning how to run it in the process, or just wait until I figure out how to navigate through it?
So you will definitely learn more in the operation of the trust. That's why, I mean, my program is really good. It teaches you about the operation before you even step foot into it, right? We teach you, how to transfer everything, how to operate, how to have board meetings, how to set up the certificate of trust. We teach you all those things. So you'll learn all that stuff first, and then you'll implement, right? Then you'll go and operate. You'll go and set up the trust, notarize it, open up your bank account, fund it, use the promissory notes, things like that. You'll start to do it, and you'll learn more as you gain experience. So you're gonna learn more in the actual operation, or what we call trusteeship. Trusteeship is It's just on another level. Honestly, it's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you so much.
You're welcome, Bernard. You're so welcome. And I did want to tell anybody that the links are inside of the chat. So our contact information, where you can find the replay on our YouTube channel is in there. We do have an ebook if you guys are interested. Our website is also there. And also if you wanted to put a deposit. So if you guys want to secure the 20% discount, and let's just say that you don't have all of the funds to enroll or to get into a payment plan, then you can put a $200 deposit in the next 24 hours and that'll secure your 20% discount. And then you can enroll, or you can roll into a payment plan later on, okay? So let's see. We have the wheelchairpreneur. You're still on mute?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. One more thing. So with the 508c18, so when the money's in there that we contributed from either business trust or W-2 income. So what happens to that money? Like eventually, like how is it used?
That's a really good question. So you can use that money for any investments. You can use it for, so investments meaning stocks, bonds, businesses. You can buy crypto with it. You can invest it in any financial market. So that money you can invest it, okay? The next thing that you can do is you'll be able to also borrow. So that's how I told you we teach you how to move money around so that you're able to use it for other things, okay? That's not associated. The last thing you can use the money for is your philanthropic endeavors or any charities.
Okay, so basically, I could theoretically grant myself money to start a new business or to invest in a real estate project or something like that.
Yeah, you can compensate yourself. So what you determine what your compensation is.
All right, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next we have Samuel.
Oh, I wrote the question in the chat. Let me.
Okay, I can take a look at it. It says, do you assist with setting up an offshore trust for asset protection? And the done for you. So the done for you is only for the 3 trusts, which are domestic. So they're used here in the United States and all of the US territories. We do have a program coming soon, which is going to teach everything about offshoring. So we have an international trust. We'll teach you how to open up a Swiss bank account, but that's not going to be included with the done for you. It's going to be a separate program for those individuals who have international investments.
When?
Yeah. It's gonna be, so it's either gonna be Q3 or Q4. So it's just very soon, honestly, like in the next, I would say in the next 2 to 4 months.
Okay, that's fine. I can wait for that.
All right, awesome. And we have Yolanda.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm wonderful, Yolanda. How are you?
I'm doing well. I have a question. My question is straightforward. When you purchase your land under the trust, like the trust purchased the land, is the land protected from the government from eminent domain? Because I had noticed that a lot of people who had land, they were fighting with the government because the government wanted to take their land. And so if the property is in the trust, is it protected from eminent domain, or should the land be owned by a business that's owned by the trust? Or how, that's my question, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So, so it's very challenging to protect land from eminent domain, because the government is bullies and they try to feel like everything that they're doing is correct. So I cannot say that yes, it is. Okay. I haven't seen it. As far as that property being owned by either a business or a trust, it needs to be owned by the trust. Because if it's owned by the business, it will end up in probate and it's not protected. Remember, we learned that your business is, you have limited asset protection with your business. So what you need to do is for that property, if it's like an investment, then, and you already have like a company, then the property needs to be directly owned by the trust in order to avoid probate and for the highest form of asset protection. And then the company needs to be the manager of the real estate.
Okay, got you. Got you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. And then next we have Earl.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I have another question about the credit building side. There's a lot of things that go on where people say that you got to build up your personal credit first. Um, and is that necessary when it comes to the trust fund?
It depends on how you want to do it. There's two ways to do it. So you can either be a personal guarantee and that'll get you to build business credit faster. If you don't want to be a personal guarantee or maybe your credit is not the best, then you can build credit EIN only, but you have to go down the route to where you're getting a bunch of trade lines. So we recommend that you get a minimum of at least 10 trade lines for your business trust off of that EIN so that it can be able to build its own credit without you being a personal guarantee and without your personal credit being a factor or impacted.
Is that included in the do-it-yourself situation, or is that something separate?
Yeah, we teach you. So we have training videos that teaches you. We have a list of net 30 accounts. We have many ebooks available building a business credit, and then you still have access to our funding specialists, and so you'll be able to, and you can see his information is inside of the chat too. So our educator is available to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Absolutely. And so he doesn't charge in order to get you funding for the trust or even your corporations. So it's performance based. So it's just a percentage of whatever you qualify for. So he has gotten 8 figures in funding. So it's fantastic. Let me see. So I did see a question in the chat. So can the grantor set up the trust to become irrevocable after they are no longer able to make decisions themselves? So if you have a revocable trust and the grantor dies, it automatically becomes irrevocable. And it depends on the type of trust that you're setting up. So the word irrevocable does need to be inside of the declaration in order for it to be classified as irrevocable. And then someone says, is it better to have IUL or whole life? So whole life, you earn dividends, and then IULs, you earn interest. So whole life, you're going to earn less. Dividends usually is about 4%. With IUL, you're going to earn more. So it just depends. So if you're interested, book a call with our insurance department. The link is in the chat. So that you can have a session with them and they'll be able to see what your unique situation is. Let me see. So if the grantor is still alive but is on a machine or other devices to keep them alive, that's fine. Yeah, so that is fine if the grantor is still alive. And once they transition, if it's revocable, it becomes irrevocable. So listen, the trust is designed to outlive the grantor and the trustee. Okay, that's what it's designed to do. So the trust is going to outlive you. The trust is going to outlive the grantor. It is okay. All right. So the trust only needs one trustee in order to be operational. So the grantor can transition, the trustee can also transition, the successor will take over. It only needs one trustee in order to operate. All right, guys, so we are all done. Thank you to everyone who stayed on the call. I am looking forward to helping you guys out through this journey. Once again, our workshop is next week. So it's Monday through Friday from 11 to 2 Eastern Standard Time. So I hope to see you inside of the workshop. Enjoy your 20% off. So the discount code is the word trust and the number 20 all together. You can use it on our website, which is wealthytrustee.com. If you want to put down a deposit so you can secure that 20% discount, go ahead and get your deposit in the next 24 hours. And the last thing I want to tell you guys is that everyone on this call is a generational curse breaker. So it's time to change the trajectory of not only your life, but your kids' lives. Because your kids, they cannot inherit your job, but they can inherit the trust, right? They can inherit a position in the trust. They can take over after you. So now you're going to be raising them as beneficiaries and trustees versus whatever they were going to traditionally do. So with that being said, you guys have a blessed and amazing rest of your evening. Happy 4th of July, and I will see you guys next week on the workshop. Bye, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Bye, Lydell.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Everybody have a great night.